ladies.
Hi.
Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday
Indeed.
and welcome to
Ladies Who Lore Special Edition?
special edition.
Oh yeah, very special edition.
Ladies, we did something really cool.
Yeah.
Feeling very proud of us right now and very excited to share with you what we are going to share.
Yes, we had such a wonderful opportunity to get a preview of Blood and Myth, which is Hulu's newest documentary that is coming on September 4th, tomorrow. Mark your calendars.
It's like Christmas Eve.
It really is.
We are so excited to announce that we got the opportunity to preview the documentary and to interview its director, Kahlil Hudson, and its executive producer and sort of main character, James Dommek Jr.
It was so much fun. And for those who don't know or haven't heard of it, Blood and Myth is a documentary coming out on Hulu that after a series of shocking violent crimes that shatters a remote native village in northern Alaska, one man, James, embarks on a journey to investigate a terrifying paranormal connection.
It was the best documentary. It was so well done. It's based off of an Audible series called Midnight Sun. And the way that they transform this into a visual medium is so beautifully done.
And I'm just going to caveat before we go any further, this is not an ad.
Oh, yeah, no. We made actually $0 from doing this, and we wouldn't have it any other way.
And yet it feels priceless to us.
No, it was such an incredible experience. We would have paid to do it. We did not do that either. It was just a real cool synchronicity for a documentary that we were already excited to see and something that aligns so perfectly with Ladies Who Lore.
Yeah.
We found some people who we align with.
Yeah, and the lore that is intertwined with this documentary is so cool and fascinating.
Yeah, it follows, if anyone knows, the Iñukuns, which is a maybe mythological humanoid cryptid creature that lives in the Alaskan wilderness. And they have short bodies, big heads. They can lure you or influence you to do certain things. And the documentary ties in the lore of Iñukuns, or maybe not the lore of Iñukuns, into a true crime thing that actually happened and affected this community.
It's speculated that the Iñukuns were a real tribe and then they kind of just disappeared, and then now it became this legend.
There is just such a theme of storytelling throughout. James is a storyteller. His great-grandfather was a storyteller. It runs deep in his community. And to be able to talk with the storytellers of this and this lore that is bigger, larger than life, and yet somehow very realistic and very believable, if we're being honest. To talk with people who made that and created just a really cool narrative was awesome.
It was so fun.
Yeah.
And to that, enjoy the 25-minute interview. We promise it is so much fun.
Yes.
And it'll give you a really fun look into the documentary that we just know you guys are gonna love.
And I would say an even more detailed look into the documentary with some tidbits that were not mentioned in the documentary that we got to hear about.
You're gonna get chills, my friends.
Yeah, absolute chills. But we won't talk all day. Yes. Go listen to our interview.
Our interview was over Zoom, so the audio quality might be a little bit different, but trust us, it's still good and perfect.
Have fun.
Thanks for sitting with us today. I'm Jessie.
I'm Sammy.
And I'm Lindsay.
And we're the Ladies Who Lore. We're a podcast that dives deep into all things lore and bottles of wine.
We are so honored to be able to chat with you both about your phenomenal documentary, Blood and Myth. But before we get into questions, we'd love for you both to introduce yourselves to our listeners.
Sure. I lost my light here, but yeah. My name's I'm James Dommek Jr., the creator, writer of Midnight Sun and Blood and Myth. Born and raised in Alaska, and happy to be here.
I am Kahlil Hudson. I'm the director and one of the executive producers of Blood and Myth. I'm from Juneau, Alaska, born and raised.
We're excited to dive in with our first question. So you mentioned early on in the documentary that the region of northern Alaska where this story takes place is a relatively harsh landscape. And there's a lot of evidence that topography influences local folklore and belief. I think we'd all love to hear a bit from both of you about how the setting plays a role in this story, both mythologically and otherwise.
Yeah, Alaska's a character. there's a reason why there's so many shows set up here, reality shows, and the weather itself, the land, the ocean, it's very extreme. And I think that makes the stories extreme, the way of life. It's a character. I always wanted to write it as almost as a person, just because it feels like it behaves that way.
Mm.
There's a tribe south of me who has this belief that the weather it'll try to trick you into thinking it's going to be nice. It's going to be nice. Come on out. And then you go out and then it switches, and it's you just treat it differently, write it differently. So the darkness, the 6 months of darkness, especially above the Arctic Circle, lends to a lot of the traditional stories kind of leaning towards kind of horror, kind of dark, kind of scary type stories. So the culture itself, we love true crime, we love monsters, we love just kind of dark, kind of scary stuff. Just because you get complete darkness in the winter and then 24 hours of sunlight in the summer. And so you're kind of it's a little manic, it feels like, but all over. But it's not. It's different.
It certainly feels like a character in the documentary itself. Kahlil, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, the land, right, is very important, still very important to indigenous people all over Turtle Island or North America. I would say no place more so than up in the Arctic, where people are still surviving using subsistence, right? Hunting and gathering. Without hunting and gathering, without subsistence, people wouldn't be able to survive up there just because it's so difficult to get food, right? A can of Coke can cost $6 just because it needs to get flown up or barged in or whatever. So the land is very, very important, and people are still very connected to the land up there. And so we knew that we wanted to show that, and make the land a character in the film. And even going back to looking at some of that archival, and the landscapes behind everyone as they're getting out of the plane and everything. I mean, it's there, and people are tied to the land. And then there's stories, right? And storytelling, and this idea that like stories were meant to keep you alive. They were meant to keep you on the path. And part of that was to use a little bit of fear, right? Like, because the land can kill you up there, right? The land doesn't care if you live or die. And so stories were told to help you stay on the right path.
Shifting just a little bit into that true crime, that horror that you touched on a little bit, you spoke with Teddy in jail in one of the most chilling and humanizing moments of the film for us. And I'm not entirely sure how late the conversation came in the process of filming, but how did it influence you, and did it ultimately influence the direction you all took with the film?
Well, when we set out to make the film and we had it pitched to Hulu early on, we had it set that we were going to make this without talking to Teddy, because I had been trying to talk to him for 8 years. I've been trying to talk to him since 2018. Yeah. And so it came in the middle of the production that he called me, because I had written him many letters, and I'd leave him my number, I'd send him books. It's like, just tell him, just talk to me. I want to hear your side of the story. Come on, like basically begging him. And he finally called me, and it freaked me out, because it was like, oh, because I knew I listened to so many of his tapes. I knew exactly who it was on the phone, just from his voice. And I mean, going to the prison in the middle of winter in Alaska, the frozen razor wire, it just looks more, man. It's worse. It's icy razor wire is terrifying. So I definitely had some anxiety things going on the first couple times I went to the prison. First time I went was by myself. Teddy approved me to be a visitor. And I thought it was going to be like in the movies where there was a glass and I was on a phone, and he's on the other side, and it wasn't like that. It was like a big cafeteria kind of looking place. It looked like a school cafeteria. And there's all these little tables, and I sat across the table from him for the first time and talked to him for an hour. You get 1 hour. It was a real process to get the interview with Ted, and I can't believe we did. I'm so happy we did, but it took a lot.
Wow.
I'm sure. Yeah. Kahlil, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, James met with Teddy, but I don't think James really was in a place. I mean, they were kind of feeling each other out, from my understanding. And so when we went into the big interview, there were questions that James has been wanting to ask Teddy for 8 years, right? These unanswered questions. And so, we're kind of getting psyched up as we were preparing to go in, because they're tough questions to ask, that they hadn't spoken about previous to this final interview. James, you can see in the documentary, but he was just sweating profusely. His hands, there was like a pool of sweat under his hands, and my anxiety was through the roof as well, and
Mm.
and he walks in, and just the presence, just his way of being, like, you can see why he made a good actor, because
Mm.
he has a presence about him that's just powerful. The first time he walked into the room, when James and I met with him off camera, I was just, like, I thought I was gonna have a heart attack.
Wow. Well, speaking of all those questions that you had building for all those years, was there anything that you weren't able to ask him that you had wanted to?
Not really. We got it
Awesome.
all out. Yeah, we touched the bottom of the
That's perfect.
pool. We touched the bottom of the pool that day. Yeah, but I was so nervous. My throat was so tight. My
Oh.
palms were so sweaty. Yeah, I was, because we only had an hour and a half,
Hmm.
and that's all they allow in that prison. And so we had one shot to get it, and so I was like, don't screw this up.
Yeah, it was
It was amazing.
very moving.
Mm.
And the Iñukuns are such a central part of Teddy's story and this documentary. And in the Audible series, Midnight Sun, while talking to Big Bob about the Iñukuns, he said, if you talk about them, they'll come and they'll start fucking with you. While making this documentary, did either of you feel like you'd be affected by his words, or has your relationship with the Iñukuns changed after making this?
During the process, we learned, we were interviewing all sorts of people for this, elders also. And then we talked to this one elder, very respected elder named Ron Brower. He's a professor, he's an Iñupiaq professor. And he let us know, because so many villagers were so reluctant to talk to me about their
Mhm.
experiences. A lot of them have had things they can't explain out in the country, out in the back country, because like Kahlil said, we spend a lot of time hunting and fishing and gathering, getting firewood, picking berries, fishing, hunting animals, birds. You're out in the country a lot. You're out in the middle of nowhere a lot, and people have had weird experiences, but we're very reluctant to talk about. And Ron Brower told us that these stories never used to be taboo. The topic of the Iñukun were never taboo. It was when the church came around and the missionaries came around, they convinced us that all of our stories were bad,
Wow.
and only the stories in the Bible we should respect and talk about. All the other stuff's silly. And so that's where a lot of this belief came from, this modern belief that you, and there was also this old kind of, there's this old belief too, that the Iñukun have connections to the dark side, to dark shamanic things. They're connected to dark shamanic power. And so I think that's where some of the peoples we talk about it, we don't talk about them. We don't talk about that, because they either know the old stories about them being maybe connected to the dark arts, or the church convinced them that it was bad. But either way, it was tough to pull out of people.
Hmm. What about you, Kahlil? Anything like that for you?
Well, I wouldn't say that I started out a skeptic, but by the end of the project, I have 100% belief that Iñukuns exist or existed at one point in the very recent past. 100%.
Wow.
No doubt. Now, they might be a flesh and blood tribe of people who have decided not to live in the Western world and continue to live the traditional ways, at least for a period of time after contact and after the rest of the Iñupiaq tribe integrated with the West as it is. But so there's that. There is also, real quick story. I was just in Wales about a month ago, which is this tiny little town that you can see Russia from. And I had this experience. I was talking with my friend the night before about Iñukuns. I was telling him about this documentary. And I even said, like, they say if you talk about them, they'll come and fuck with you. We were staying in the school because when you're in these little villages, there's no hotels, there's no Airbnbs. You have to stay in the school. And so I was staying in the school and I woke up and this door that was, I didn't know what it was, but it was locked when I went to bed, was open. And it was a closet full of kids' toys. I had tried the door. I was like, what's in here? And couldn't get it open, went to bed, woke up, it was open. And there was a ceiling tile, like these ceiling tiles, okay? That right above my head, that was pushed aside, and it was just a black hole. And there was a string hanging down to about right here, right over my bed. I got up and I like booked out of there. And I went and told my friend, I was like, come look at this. And he was like, you were talking about Iñukuns last night. I was like, that is exactly what I was thinking.
I'm crying.
Yeah, I moved out of that because we were staying in classrooms, right? I moved to a different classroom and I didn't go back in that room.
Wow, that is a wild story. Speaking of Midnight Sun, Kahlil, how was the process of taking a fully formed audio series and expanding it in a visual medium?
Well, yeah, it was both challenging, but also, what we did was the challenge was that the story had been an iteration of this story had already been told. And so, but we knew that we wanted to, when I was listening to the audiobook, I wanted to see what Big Bob looked like. I wanted to see these movies Teddy was in. I'd already seen On the Ice, but I wanted to see his performances in these movies. I wanted to see Teddy, right? And so we knew that making a documentary, we were going to be able to kind of bring all this richness, visual richness into the film. James had already kind of gone on this investigative journey, and so we decided that, like, there were all these people that James tried to talk to, least of which being Teddy, right? That he wasn't able to talk to in the audiobook. And so we went out and we worked really hard. The two of us traveled around and talked to people face to face and tried to build trust with people to try and get them to speak with us. And so, the way we kind of think of the documentary, the film is kind of an evolution of the audiobook. The audiobook still, I mean, you all listen to it, is still, it's a masterpiece, right? It's excellent. And you can watch the documentary and go back and listen to the audiobook and still get everything out of it, right? I mean, it's a story. That was the challenge. We also wanted to take the components of the audiobook and keep those components that we knew worked really well. And we knew that the heart of the story really was James, and as you all have seen, James has a way with words. He's got the gift of gab, as he likes to say. And so putting James at the heart of this and making James a character in the film, telling James's story, we knew that we wanted to maintain that, but figuring out a way to kind of evolve it a little bit was a challenge.
Yeah. What about you, James? Was there anything that was different for you?
I knew that people wanted to see it. The audiobook did really well. It ended up being a New York Times bestseller, #1 for 6 weeks, and ended up being one of the most downloaded Audible originals of all time. So I was very floored. It was my first project. I just I'm not a
Wow.
journalist. I'm just drummer. I'm a dude from Anchorage, and I just was like, whoa, I guess there's something here. I always felt it would make a good movie, but I felt like I had to make the audiobook first. So the dream early on was I was making it a movie. And Alaska, especially Northwest Alaska in the fall time, you could point a camera anywhere in the Kobuk River Valley and it's National Geographic beautiful. But just my culture is very kind of closed off just because we're so isolated to the rest of the world, especially to outsiders. You get outsiders coming and asking questions, pointing a camera around. People get pretty tough pretty quick. I just wanted people to kind of see the stories that my culture and my area of the world has, and I've always been obsessed with survival stories. And the way that the Buckle brothers got out of that situation was, you don't hear about that. That usually doesn't work out like that. I was pretty floored that they made it. People wanted to see Bob. They always like, what's Bob look like? Obviously, talking to Teddy, I've always wanted to talk with him. Getting Paul Buckle's side of the story. Teddy's sister Lorena was another person that I would get so close to interviewing, and she would just back out at the last minute, and it maybe happened 2 or 3 times. And I just had to be super patient. Eventually, we got it, but yeah, it was slow and steady.
After listening to the audiobook, it really was, you could just tell just by listening to it, it was meant to be visual.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And you mentioned your music, your background in music, and I'm curious if your drumming influences your storytelling.
Yeah, it's rhythms, patterns. Those are definitely, you can start clocking those. Every story has a rhythm, a pattern. All the music has different rhythms and patterns and, sections, crescendos and peaks and valleys and all that. I love playing music. I miss it so much. I just did a gig with Quinn Christopherson. My last band I was in was I was founding member of Medium Build. I don't know if you heard of Medium Build. He's out right now. Shout out Nikki C. But yeah, he got signed to Atlantic Records and he's out playing arena. Yeah, he's doing big shows. He's touring Australia right now. But yeah, I like making these projects though, because I can sneak in getting in the studio and making some music for these audiobooks or these documentaries. So I'm still getting to play a little bit, but just not as much as I used to. So
smart. Yeah, we appreciated the sort of grounding nature that your artistry played into the film. It was a really cool way to get to know you and to set the tone throughout. It was awesome.
Was there anything on the cutting room floor that didn't make it into the film that you wish you could have kept in the film, or that you wish just had a bigger part to play?
Oh my God. I talked to Kahlil about this when we were in LA last. I said, how do you deal with this, man? I said, because this is my first time. And I said, how do you deal with this? I said, we did so much work. There were so many cool shots that we did that were just so badass and like brilliant. And Leo was like just nonchalant driving the car in LA. And he's like, you gotta strangle your darlings. You gotta strangle your darlings. And I was like, okay, I get it. That's the name of this game. But yeah, there was some drone stuff that we did. That I just like, where is that? There was some stuff that, especially up north, when we were up in Guyana and up on the river, and I don't know.
We had enough material to make a series for sure. And this was initially pitched as a series. 3-episode series, and I mean, we cut huge segments out of the film. There are multiple interviews with people that we ended up not being able to use just because it didn't fit. We knew that we were going to be shooting more than we needed, so some of the directions that we went in post were more academic, and just for the sake of like keeping things moving, we cut a lot of that stuff. There's like the whole theory that these Iñukuns are an actual tribe of people that are still living in this vast expanse of wilderness that is this confluence of these 3 national parks, these protected areas where no one travels. And so if there was a place in the United States where there might still be an uncontacted tribe, it would be right here where these Iñukuns are. So it's very possible that there are Iñukuns, there's a tribe living in that area that just choose to keep themselves private. And so we go into that theory in depth, and there's a bit of that still in there, but not as extensive as what we had.
I gotta say, we talked at length about sort of that line of the national parks and everything after seeing it. It was just so much to think about. I'll wrap it up with a final question. One of the most beautiful themes of this documentary, I think most people will find, and we certainly found, was returning to the old ways. James, your great-grandfather was a storyteller, and it seems you've now followed in his footsteps. What is the importance of storytelling to you, and what stories do you both believe need to be told at this moment?
Storytelling kind of gave me purpose. It kind of kept me out of trouble these past 8 years, I guess. It's important to tell these stories that just a lot of the culture wasn't written down. A lot of it got lost when contact happened. And so I think we're kind of playing catch up, it feels like, on my end up north. And I don't just getting these stories just told, just out there, and kind of letting the rest of the world know that, Alaska Natives like to tell stories, and we're good at telling stories. It's the winters are cold and dark and long, and that's how we pass time. But it was also a way of how we kept each other alive. You could survive if you remembered the right story. It was a way of entertainment, but it was also a way of just passing on knowledge, but also survival. And I think it's just important nowadays that it's just nice that Indigenous people are finally getting a chance to tell our own story. For so many years, our stories were told for us by other people who aren't from where we're from. And we're finally getting a chance to tell our own stories in our own way, in our own style, our own pacing. And it's exciting. So I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Just to echo James, the indigenous tribes of North America all have their own Iñukun, right? Even in Iñupiaq storytelling, there are other beings that there are stories about. I'm Tlingit, and which is a tribe in southeast Alaska, and we have our Kushtaka, right? We have, which are different. They're shape-shifting being, but they have a lot of similarities with Iñukuns of the north. And the fact that these stories were, oral traditions, even modern Native people, we're just not telling these stories in the same way anymore. Young people are on their phones. And so the stories need to be shared in other ways, while still keeping the tradition of oral storytelling. This is kind of what we're doing this documentary. I think it's important to honor that tradition, but we also need to preserve these stories in a way that the next generation can still appreciate.
Absolutely. And you've both told a story with this documentary that is so moving and so engaging. So thank you so much for joining us and our listeners for this conversation. And congratulations on the release of Blood and Myth, out September 4th on Hulu.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both. We loved the documentary.
Welcome back. Hello.
Hi. We hope you had a great time.
Did you scream at that story? Because we were screaming at that story.
Yeah.
Absolutely wild.
We wanted to scream more at that story.
Yeah, we were
trying to play it cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were like, okay, you can only cry so much in an interview, right?
Yeah.
But we went home and cried later.
Yeah.
We had a full in-depth conversation after.
Yes.
It was such a good story in general, but also their answers to all of it were incredible.
They're awesome people.
Yeah, hearing their insight behind just the little nuances and details behind making this documentary was so beautiful.
So cool. And I know that we were all very nervous to do this. Yeah. It's hard to interview someone, let alone with 2 other people. So you can definitely see me breaking out in hives in the video on YouTube. Go watch it.
That's crazy. I didn't know that was happening.
You didn't know I was breaking out in hives?
Yeah.
Thank you. I played it so cool and so calm and collected.
My hands were so sweaty.
Oh my God. But I will say, once we got to talk with Kahlil and James, they were so comforting and so easy. And it was just a really fun conversation. So thank you. If they're listening, I don't doubt it. But thank you, James, and thank you, Kahlil. Honestly, it's so fucking cool.
Yeah.
It was awesome talking with them.
It's just really inspiring creatives and people who tell stories. And I think there's not to say synergy, but there is some synergy there in terms of their interests, our interests, the fact that we got to talk with like-minded people who see the value of story, who see the value of lore, and want to pass it along. So that's what we're trying to do here with you.
Yes.
Hopefully you feel included in this circle of storytelling.
Yeah. And make sure you watch Blood and Myth out on Hulu tomorrow, and then tell us all of your thoughts.
Yes, please email us at ladieswholorepod@gmail.com, DM us, join our Patreon and write us there. We can't wait to hear your thoughts on this documentary.
And fun fact, if you are part of the Patreon, you've already seen this episode, or at least the interview part.
What? That's crazy.
What?
I should join the Patreon.
Get on it. It's less than a cup of coffee a month.
Oh my God.
It's a full-blown ad now. Just kidding. I mean, we love everyone regardless of whether you are supporting us in that way or not.
Yeah.
And while we're doing the asks, if you can't support on Patreon, even 5 stars goes a long way. Telling your friends goes a long way. We are really happy to reach this milestone for our podcast, and we are just so energized and excited to keep going. Stay tuned. October is going to be a fun month for that. But any support you can offer us helps us keep going. So thank you truly, and thank you for getting us to this point too.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed this really fun special episode. We did, and we can't wait for you to see the documentary.
And genuinely, this is not an ad.
No,
that documentary is both beautiful, chilling, and moving.
Incredible.
We wouldn't have interviewed them if we didn't enjoy the documentary, for real.
Yeah.
We're not going to endorse something that we don't believe in.
And boy, do we believe in it.
Well, thank you. We'll be back next week with a story from Sammy.
Ew, maybe.
Or maybe we'll calm down and be less creepy.
Maybe it'll be a little ha-ha-hee-hee.
Ooh, I love a ha-ha-hee-hee.
And if you're looking to pair something with this episode, water. Cold water.
Love a cold water.
Outside.
hot outside.
Hydrate. Should we talk about the notes of our water? Crisp. A perfect summer's day.
Microplastics.
Mine has a little lemon, you know?
Don't ruin it.
Sorry, I won't. All right, ladies.
Should we sing in the style of...
Just our normal. I think we should do our normal.
Yeah, let's sing our
Let's
normal.
do it. Let's do it.
Let's
Yeah.
at the end of
Let's
every
go back to
episode,
who we
if
were.
you know.
In the honor of Blood and Myth, let's go back to our roots.
Yeah.
I love it.
3, 2, 1.
Ladies galore!
We are getting... We have perfect pitch on that.
Nailed it.
Broadway.